said, it could be something that several other countries or leadership has done in the past, and I'm just not familiar with. But nevertheless, we see this trait in our current leader that is essentially that of a narcissist, right? Ensuring that his face and his branding is left behind in a good manner, right? So you can go and look into all the different things he's done. I'm sure you've been tracking them as far as up until now. Yeah, so that is one of the issues that we face with our current administration, is that we don't have exactly the current administration that we were sold on, right? We don't have the nation-focused, common sense-focused, America First administration. Now, the last thing here is the legacy that's to come, right? So the title is Your Masters and How to Defeat Them. And so we know our current masters, but the thing is with the current masters is they still apply to the truths that we have established. So eventually they're going to die, right? And especially individuals like Trump, he is up there in age, and so he's at a point where he doesn't have that much time, depending on, you know, his health and everything in that regard. If he lives a healthy life, whatever, doesn't matter, he'll be gone. And what is to remain is the Trump legacy, family legacy, right? So specifically individuals like his son-in-law and his sons. These are individuals that have capitalized heavily off of the administration's decision making and off of corporations' decisions making. So, for instance, any AI developments, you guys can go look into that yourselves and find all the different investments that these individuals have made, to include Trump coin, right? The digital coin that upon entering office was established. So, that being said, right, you have a generation of this ideology, a generation of individuals who take on this same, I guess, policy, right? Just imagine what the father did. They're bound to make somewhat of the same decisions, right? They're cut from the same cloth, so I don't see them veering too far off from the political world, right? So that is the current world, the current stage, right? And so going into some statistics, right? So these was pulled from the Department of Labor directly. And here we have a graph that you can see exactly what I was talking about for just the significance of the pandemic. So in 2020, you see a spike, a significant spike for that matter. Almost, you know, not quite half of what we saw in 2008 housing crisis, but it's pretty high up there, sharp spike, and then we saw a subtle decline, or a pretty sharp decline, and then we're starting to see a subtle increase going into 2026. Now, some other aspects that we have to consider is that played into the significant rise in up until 2026 was Elon's or Doge's government cuts. So whenever they cut all the different departments, individuals within the departments, we saw a significant labor loss. But looking at the stats for the current population, as of now in 2026, we seem to be pretty average within the past like 2 years. There hasn't been any significant rises. As you can see in 2020 on line 17, the significant spikes in unemployment in the numbers, and I'm pretty sure this is per I think per million or per thousand. Don't quote me on that, but very much going off the whim right now. This is not. How would you say? This is not. This is very much on the fly. So bear with me, right? I was actually on a bike ride when I decided to make this video. But I would say individuals tend to like more of a discussion-based content, and I know myself, I do not like too much of post-production, so I like long-form talks. So this is what you guys are gonna get. So. All right, so that's the current stage of the world. Now, before we get into center of gravity analysis, going back to the post-pandemic world, right? The main thing that struck me to make this video in the first place was I was thinking earlier, like, you see all in the headlines, you see all the articles that are going over all these individuals, these big tech giants. You see the YouTubers talking about them, but you don't see anything really being done, right? Or any advice of what to do for the most part, right? And we live in a day and age where protesting is like it's like when you hand your brother a controller that's not plugged into the console. That way you can game and he can pretend he's gaming, right? He doesn't know he's not gaming. He thinks he's playing, right? And that's essentially what protesting accomplishes, right? And if anything, protesting actually bolsters the what do you call, how would you say, the security levels, right? And essentially it allows our government to implement more policing over the population, right? And so just like how we need catalysts for war, our efforts to practice our rights and essentially protest will be catalysts for policymaking and policing. So it actually has a counter effect. So, but that being said, the main thought that I had was the fact that these individuals are in our lifetime, right? I know I prefaced it as if like they're, on their way out the door. They're like, some of them are, but majority of them, right, are in our lifetime, and they are going to be in our lifetime. I am currently 28, and so as a 28-year-old navigating the world and trying to predict what the future is going to look like is a very difficult task, because there is no guidance that I can get from generations above me, because all these individuals are on their way out the door, or they have families, they have debt, they have things, other concerns that they have to worry about. And so when you have responsibilities and when you have debt in this nation, you don't have the luxury to simply be the, be, how would you say, the revolutionist, right? Or, I can't think of the word, but essentially it bothers me, right? Because when I talk to older individuals, and I'm sure if you guys try to have these discussions with older individuals, you get answers such as, I can't do anything about it, therefore I don't worry about it, or yeah, that stuff is messed up, but you shouldn't stress about what they do. They have your best interests at hand, right? And again, these individuals, like probably about 35 years old and above, they're focusing on they're at a different level in life, and they're focusing on different issues, right? They, like there's always the how would you say, it's not the stigma, but the 20-year-old activists, right? Every generation in the past, has had it, and it's funny. You'll see videos of old timers. You can tell like have like no life that are still out there doing it. But hey, practice your rights. I'm all for it. But how impactful it is, I'm not sure. But point being is, these people are on the face of the earth. They are on this planet, and they are playing with our lives. They're playing with our freedoms, and we don't like that, right? It's because, again, we're American. Now, if we're going off biblical doctrine, right, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. That being said, we don't take the passive approach on this, right? We want to be active. We want to be actively trying to uphold and protect the Constitution, protect our rights, our freedoms, our liberties, right? Protect our right to be. So, that being said, we're going to get into center of gravity analysis. So, center of gravity analysis. This is coming straight from Center of Gravity and Critical Vulnerabilities by Dr. Joe Strange. You can look it up. It is a publication from. Let me go to it. It's a publication from the Joint Forces Staff something school or Joint Force Staff College. Okay, so this is essentially doctrine that these people are taught and that they implement in other capacities, right? In cybersecurity, we implement this. And so I'm definitely going to be taking a technical approach when reviewing this, but this is essentially going to be the way that you can essentially unplug from relying on other people for digesting information for you and presenting you with essentially the way things are and their approach towards it, right? So I'm basically calling out like all the YouTubers that basically do like content that's driven, like political content, because they're just making money off of you listening in, and you can have access to the same data that they are essentially making all of these essentially assessments off of. So getting into defining what center of gravity is. Center of gravity is a primary source of moral or physical strength, power, and resistance. Critical capabilities are primary abilities which merits a center of gravity to be identified as such in the context of a given scenario, situation, or mission. Critical requirements are essential conditions, resources, and means for a critical capability to be fully operative. And then critical vulnerabilities are critical requirements or components thereof which are deficient or vulnerable to neutralize, interdiction, or attack in manner achieving decisive results. The smaller resources and effort applied, and the smaller the risk and cost, the better. Okay, so this is coming straight from Dr. Joe Strange. So, to essentially give you an outline of what exactly this is saying. So I know there's a big word wall. So here we're going to be using a football graphic, to explain exactly what center of gravity analysis is. So in this graphic, going off the definition, right, center of gravity is primary sources of moral or physical strength, power, and resistance. So in this case, for this example, we're using the quarterback as a center of gravity for the team, right? With a great quarterback, the team is going to win. Okay, so what does the center of gravity need in order to succeed? So critical requirements, essential conditions, resources, and means for a critical capability to be fully operative, right? Critical capabilities refer to center of gravity. So what does the critical requirement, what does the quarterback need to be successful, right? Well, he needs an offensive line. The quarterback, in order to successfully make the play that he's going to make, the offensive line needs to act accordingly and protect him at all costs. Now, some other potential center of gravities can be the fan base, right? Because the power of morale, the power of having a fan base is very significant, and there's why there's home turf advantages in any sport that you play, and that's why it is such a significant thing, especially when you think about like worldwide sports, where, like, so for instance, like the World Cup. Now, that being said, it's not necessarily the end-all be-all. However, there could be other elements such as the overall morale. So, for instance, like for teams, say for instance, they're playing on an away game, but they have an incredible coaching staff that knows exactly how to boost morale and hype everybody up. They're probably going to do pretty well, and teams win all the time away. So it's not necessarily the end all be all. There's several different. I know in the pub, it's probably center of gravity. It's probably just like one, but In this instance, there's several different